Season 2, Episode 6, The Little Red Running Club. Pleut de drap. JB was up early for the Sunday morning fell race. He was walking about the house, gathering his things and yawning. His body could quite happily have rolled over and gone back to sleep. His mobile phone started to ring. He could see from the caller ID that it was Camo ringing. Is something up? He thought. Has something happened and he's ringing me to cancel? Hi Camo, everything okay? He said.
Yeah, no problem, buddy. Looking forward to it,
he said.
No, I was just ringing to see if you could pick up Yorkshire instead of me.
I suppose I could, said JB. Instead of you, not as well as you. Is something up with Three Coats? How are you getting there?
No, there's nothing wrong with Three Coats,
he said.
He's going to pick me up so we can talk about the LRRC and the race we're doing this Wednesday night. You and Yorkshire haven't joined yet, so it makes sense that we switch. We might not have time otherwise. Yorkshire will be stood in the usual place at 7:15.
Oh, OK, said JB.
Right, see you later, buddy,
said Camo, clicking off. JB looked at the silent phone. He picked up Yorkshire from the usual spot. Well, this is a bit different, said JB.
Yes, it is rather, isn't it?
said Yorkshire. So you haven't joined the LRRC either, said JB.
No, not yet,
said Yorkshire.
I will do. I just haven't got around to it yet. I just didn't seem to find the time. It's the inaugural LRRC fell race this Wednesday night. If I fill in the application tonight, there's a chance that my membership can still come through in time. It would be nice to be there at the launch of it all.
No turning up and paying on the day, said JB.
Quite,
said Yorkshire.
If I miss it, it will be down to my own tardiness, I'm afraid. So it makes sense that Camo and Three Coats travel together to get themselves organised. Are you still dead set against joining?
I never said I was dead set against joining, said JB.
But you're probably not going to,
said Yorkshire. JB just shrugged, and Yorkshire looked out of the window at the countryside as they had just left the town. JB did not like the feeling of being bounced into it, but there it was. There was only two choices, in or out. They arrived at the little village where the race was. It was similar to where lots of the fell races were held, a pretty little old English village built around the bend in a gently flowing river with a few stone bridges going over to connect both sides. The houses and buildings were made of stone, not brick, with climbing roses and green shrubs surrounding flower gardens. Not many make that effort anymore in the cities, thought JB. They'd cover it over in flags or tarmac. The houses and buildings were built on top of the undulating landscape, and nature poked through with greenery everywhere, so that the village seemed ancient and part of nature, not like modern housing estates, where the landscape was bulldozed flat, the houses were regimented and identical, the trees were spindly and plastic-looking and were not natural to England, and all the rivers and streams were hidden behind walls of concrete and filtered away like a dirty secret. It was usually a sign that the ancient ways and institutions were still functioning in the community. There would be a good pub or two. The post office would be clinging on. There might be a good local butcher, more expensive than a supermarket, but prized and with plenty of customers. The market street would be shops locally owned, and national change would be kept out. The local farming families would be big in the community, on the council and the board of governors at the schools. The church would be comparatively well attended, and a prize pick for any vicar or priest. He would have to be active in the community, but well behaved. New ideas would be treated with suspicion. Everyone would know everyone's business, and they would be nudged into the right way of doing things. But conversely, there would be local characters and personalities with colour, not the same bland, grey, impersonal people of the city who you would never know. JB wondered about how the newcomers to the village felt. They would be attracted by the beauty of the place, but would they appreciate what had made it so? Would they complain about the noise of the church bells, the farmers mowing the fields early in the morning or late at night? Would they be happy to see all these fell runners arriving with their cars into the village, or would they think it a pain and wish it away, maybe even complaining, not realising it was part of the ancient character of the place and what had attracted them there in the first place? There were a few fell runners making their way through the narrow streets, and JB followed the temporary cardboard signs on sticks stuck into the grass verges, directing him to parking for the fell race. The signs led to a field and a number of older folk in yellow bibs, mainly gentlemen, but some ladies, guided him and Yorkshire to a parking spot. "At least it's dry on the field," said JB.
Of course,
said Yorkshire.
I don't drive, so I don't have to consider these things.
Have you never thought of learning? Said JB. Yorkshire paled.
Failed 5 times, he said. I'll probably give it another go at some point.
Oh, said JB.
Oh, look over there,
said Yorkshire.
A red shirt with black hoops. Isn't that an LRRC shirt? Our first one?
JB looked across. It was quite a dramatic shirt. Or is it a black shirt with red hoops? He said, just to be funny.
Ooh,
said Yorkshire, puzzled.
I'm afraid you've got me there. Now I don't know what to think.
JB chuckled to himself.
I've got to admit, it does look a good shirt all the same,
said Yorkshire. It does, said JB. Could just be because it's new, though. It might not look as crisp after a few washes.
Ooh, yes, those colours could fade pretty quickly, said Yorkshire.
There was a marquee on the field for signing in, paying and collecting race numbers, and JB and Yorkshire wandered across. JB felt it a little strange to be doing it with Yorkshire for a change and not Camo. It was the same, but somehow totally different. It was the same feeling he had as one time he had walked around his high school as a child, when it was empty and not full of pupils and teachers. All familiar but creepily different. It was strangely unsettling. They were told the start of the race was in the centre of the village outside the pub called the Fox and Hounds, and they wandered down following other runners. Most of the other runners were in the usual familiar club colours, but there were some wearing the new red and black of the LRRC. The runners were gathering outside the pub. There was a tendency for those at the same club to be stood chatting together. The biggest group, twice the size of any local fell running club, was the new red and black banded LRRC. It was a sudden new alien presence, and all the other runners could not help but look across. They seemed louder and more boisterous than everyone else, and a little set apart. Camo and Three Coats were with them, happily chatting away. Yorkshire saw them and hesitated.
Ooh, this is a trifle awkward, he said. I say, do we go over to them or not?
Three Coats happened to look up and see them. Yorkshire waved a little nervously. Three Coats seemed to hesitate, and then he tapped Camo on the shoulder. They talked for a moment and then came walking across. A little reluctant to leave their new friends, it seems, said JB.
Oh, yes, well, understandable, really,
said Yorkshire.
It's at the new and shiny phase. It will all settle down soon enough. Hello, chaps,
said Yorkshire, waving.
Hiya,
said Camo. Not wearing your club colours? said JB.
No,
said Camo.
Thought we would try this new gear out. Didn't we, Three Coats?
Yes we did,
said Three Coats.
Don't want to discover it rubbing on Wednesday night. Not on the big opening event,
said Camo. Seems like everyone else had the same idea, said JB, nodding at the big LRRC group.
Oh, great, isn't it?
said Camo.
It's taking off big time. Fell running has never seen anything like this, and we're in right at the start of it. Look, it's the biggest group already. It will be even bigger when you two join.
Yes, I was planning on filling the application form tonight, actually,
said Yorkshire.
My membership might come through in time for Wednesday, so I might see you there.
Doubt it,
said Three Coats.
It should be ready for the next one, though, in a fortnight. Come on, Camo. We need to speak to those LRRC guys about Wednesday. Parking and everything.
You're right,
said Camo. The two of them started to back away towards the LRRC group.
Hope your membership comes through in time for Wednesday, Yorkie,
said Camo.
If we don't see you on the way round, we'll see you at the pub on Friday, and we'll tell you all about it.
Yes, OK,
said Yorkshire after them. JB did not answer, and watched the two of them turn and merge amongst the red and black banded shirts. That's the kiss-off right there, said JB, more to himself than Yorkshire.
The kiss-off?
said Yorkshire, staring after them.
What do you mean, JB, the kiss-off?
It's an expression, said JB. When they're about to drop someone, they give them a big compliment or a promise to send them on their way happy, so there's no trouble just before they knife them in the back.
I don't know what you're talking about, JB,
said Yorkshire. They do it on the TV competition shows all the time, said JB. Oh, that dress, that cake, that pottery, or that sales pitch you made was amazing. You've been amazing. Been amazing? Oh, yes, you've been amazing. Keep at it, keep going, and keep in touch. Oh, and shut the door on the way out, will you?
Well, I don't watch television,
said Yorkshire. JB thought of an alternative. People you meet on holiday. You know, you have a great time, and when it's time to leave, it's all, oh, we've had such a lovely time. It's been great to meet you. We must keep in touch and arrange to meet up. You know.
Ooh, I've been there on that one,
said Yorkshire.
But you exaggerate here, surely, JB. It's Three Coats and Camo we're talking about. Our oldest friends.
You think so? Said JB. How come they didn't talk about meeting up after the fell race, like we always do then?
Ooh,
stumbled Yorkshire. Exactly, said JB.
I'm sure they just forgot in their excitement,
said Yorkshire, looking wistfully across at them. How come you didn't join already? Said JB. You said you were going to.
I don't know,
said Yorkshire.
I kept meaning to, but I just didn't get around to it somehow. Every time I sat down to do it, something came up. Certainly gives you a funny feeling looking across at them all in their uniform colours. Very strange.
They look like a meeting of the Dennis the Menace fan club in those red and black stripes, said JB.
Yes,
said Yorkshire, laughing.
Very droll, JB, very droll. I'm not going to be able to get rid of that connection now. I'll be thinking about it every time I look at one.
Yeah, said JB. Doesn't seem right, though. They can run in our races, but we can't run in theirs. And it doesn't seem right they can wear their colours at our races, and no one can wear our colours on their races.
Rules is rules, JB,
said Yorkshire.
With no rules, where would we be?
You mean, apart from where you want, doing what you want? Said JB.
That would be anarchy,
said Yorkshire. At the end of the race, JB and Yorkshire got together. Runners were stood about waiting for friends in little groups. Camo and Three Coats were off with other members of the LRRC. There was lots of movement with people coming and going. JB and Yorkshire went to a little drink station and had to pass by the LRRC group all chatting and laughing. It was like two magnets pushing apart. JB and Yorkshire moved around them in an arc, avoiding the invisible force field keeping them out. They stood at the little drink station, sipping their cold water slowly, while their hot dry throats adjusted.
Do you fancy popping into the pub for a quick drink, and to see the presentations?
Said Yorkshire half-heartedly. Nah, shall we just go? Said JB.
Yes, I think so,
said Yorkshire. They set off for JB's car. Yorkshire had a last look over at the LRRC runners, with Camo and Three Coats laughing and talking in the middle of them.
How peculiar,
he said. At the pub on Friday. They met in the pub that was in the same village as the Lungsdale Fell Running Clubhouse. It was a white painted old building with the date 1672 cut into the stone above the big oak door. The walls were thick and heavy and the windows small. Inside there were still some of the old-fashioned round dark wood pub tables with copper tops that they liked to sit around on stools. A dark Dalo rail went around the pub just below the ceiling with brasses and pottery. Lots of blue or pink coloured scenes of castles and horses and carts. The odd Toby jug broke up the procession of plates.
Well, was it any good? Said Yorkshire. Pray tell.
Was it any good?
Said Camo.
It was brilliant.
Was it really?
Said Yorkshire.
I wish I filled the form in now.
You haven't filled it in yet?
Said Camo.
I thought you were going to do it last Sunday. It's been nearly a week since then.
I know,
said Yorkshire. How was it any different? Said JB. Camo and Three Coats looked at each other and smiled and then laughed.
You had to be there, JB,
said Camo.
You had to be there, JB,
repeated Three Coats, giving him a look.
Well, tell us all about it then,
said Yorkshire.
It was really well organised,
said Camo.
Much better than a normal fell race.
Really well organised,
said Three Coats.
Yes,
said Yorkshire, hoping for more.
Yeah,
said Camo. Who was running it? Said JB.
We didn't see the main guy,
said Camo.
Not the main guy,
said Three Coats.
How was it run then?
Said Yorkshire.
There was a team there, but they all said it was done over the internet,
said Camo.
They said he would probably be there keeping a check on things, but incognito.
Incognito,
said Three Coats.
Incognito?
Said Yorkshire. Who did it? No one knows, said JB. Incognito, like the superhero.
No, they were calling him Mr. Big, actually,
said Three Coats.
I never heard that,
said Camo.
I heard it,
said Three Coats.
Mr. Big, I heard.
Camo looked at Three Coats with an expression that said, Are you sure?
They did,
said Three Coats. Everyone sat around staring at each other. Camo nudged Three Coats.
Shall we show them?
He said.
Shall we?
Said Three Coats.
I think we should,
said Camo. They pulled out their LRRC race stamp books and opened them to the first page. Yorkshire took Three Coats' booklet, and JB was handed Camo's booklet for a closer look. The first sheet of many had the name of the fell race as a title, and all the details of it, where and when, the distance, height and grade of race. The last one was graded AS, meaning steep but short. After the details, it gave a history of the race and the current fastest record holders in the male and female categories. On the right, there was an outline drawing of the skyline of the fells passed over, and below that, a square box for the stamp to go when the event was completed. It was freshly stamped with a red ink LRRC letter stamp in a Gothic style.
Ooh, would you look at that?
Said Yorkshire.
Now that is impressive. All the pages are crisp and fresh. The booklet even has that new car smell.
It does, doesn't it?
Said Camo.
You've got to join now, Yorkie. You won't have that first-rate stamp like me and Three Coats, but you've got to join now.
You're right,
said Yorkshire.
I'll do it. Oh, why did I hesitate? Ew, I just had a flashback to boarding school. This reminds me of that time I hesitated in buying the 2000 AD comic when that first came out. I had every copy of it except issue number 1. Lord Fishwick teased me mercilessly for years after because he had gone and bought it.
You read 2000 AD? Said JB. Well, I never knew that, so did I. I never took you for a Judge Dredd fan.
Yes, Judge Dredd was okay, but Rogue Trooper was my favourite,
said Yorkshire. Rogue Trooper, all coloured blue, said JB, reminiscing. And his friends' personalities downloaded onto microchips and put in his weapons and backpack.
Oh, yes, said Yorkshire. Oh, it's like I was back at boarding school for a moment then.
Yorkshire shook himself to get rid of a shiver down his spine. I probably liked Slane the best, said JB.
Oh, yes, Slane, said Yorkshire. I like them all, really, except for one. I just couldn't read it.
JB and Yorkshire looked at each other. Nemesis the Warlock and Torquemada.
Nemesis the Warlock and Torquemada,
they said together and then laughed.
I never understood it,
said Yorkshire. It warped your mind, said JB.
Anyway,
said Three Coats to Yorkshire,
when you complete the application form, there's a box to fill in if an existing member recommends you. Put my name down in there. It costs you nothing, but if I get 3 new members to sign up, I get a free LRRC buff. 10 new members, and I get a pair of LRRC socks.
OK,
said Yorkshire, staring at the stamp on the booklet.
I suppose I could have a completed book on next year's fell races. Damned and blast, why did I hesitate and miss the first one?
Camo pushed his booklet towards JB.
What about the LRRC for you, Buddy? He said. You've not said you're joining yet, JB.
JB looked at it again, but did not pick it up. I'm not going to join, he said.
What?
Said Camo.
Why not?
Said Three Coats.
Look at it. You get a stamp book and everything.
I'm not bothered about that, he said. They all looked at him nonplussed. I had the same at the martial arts, he said. They were still nonplussed. He sighed and tried to explain. It's bad when one thing becomes 2, he said.
You what?
Said Three Coats.
What are you on about, JB?
Said Yorkshire. It's from the book Hagakure, the Book of the Samurai, he said. It is bad when one thing becomes two. One should not look for anything else in the way of the samurai. It is the same for anything else that is called a way. Therefore, it is inconsistent to hear something of the way of Confucius, or the way of the Buddha, and say that this is the way of the samurai. If one understands things in this manner, he should be able to hear about all ways, and be more and more in accord with his own.
What a load of gibberish, said Camo. What's that got to do with this?
Maybe I can't explain it well enough, said JB. But I see the same thing. In martial arts they had belts to try to get people interested and keep going. But I wasn't interested in the belt. I was interested in the thing itself. Meeting people, learning new things, testing yourself against other people with what you've learned, getting fitter, getting better, and the strategic combat of it. Didn't matter if I had a higher belt than you if you beat me. That's what it was all about. They were still confused. JB picked up the booklet. I'm not interested in this, he said. You asked me out onto the fells, in the heat, the cold, the rain and the snow and the wind up there. You dragged me out on the distance and the height, and you asked me to join this club, and I said okay, and we built it up. I'll come along, give it a go, and I have, and I've liked it. Now you want me to jump over to this and start it all over chasing this instead. You might think you don't have a master or a way, but we all do, and I can't jump from one to another. A man should hear of all ways and be more and more in accord with his own. The three of them looked at him and then all burst out laughing.
The way of the samurai! The way of the samurai!
Laughed Camo.
You should have only one master,
Laughed Yorkshire.
You're an idiot, you are, Jam Butty boy,
Laughed Three Coats.
You say the funniest things, JB,
said Camo. JB shrugged and took a sip of his drink. We'll see how it plays out, he said, but I'm not joining. Camo took his booklet back and carefully put it away.
You'll change your tune, JB, he said, when you see how big it gets.
What are you going to do while we are on these other 9 races?
Said Yorkshire.
You'll be on your own.
I'll manage, said JB.
Well, I need my training for the Norbert,
said Three Coats.
If your fitness drops too much, JB, I might not be able to offer you a spot on one of the legs, if you can't keep up.
The next normal race on the calendar was only a half-hour's drive away, so they only took one car and JB drove. Three Coats and Camo were proudly in LRRC colours again. Yorkshire had joined, but was wearing his usual Lonsdale fell running colours. JB, as promised, had not joined. They followed the signs for parking onto a farm field and parked up in the ad hoc rows of vehicles. There was a big group of LRRC members, bigger than last time, all stood together.
Come on, Yorkshire, let's go and have a word with our new friends,
said Three Coats.
You'd better stay here, JB, as you're not a member.
Three Coats and Camo set off to speak to them, and Yorkshire hesitated.
Well, I've not got my LRRC colours on, said Yorkshire. I'd better stay here with you, JB. Maybe next time.
OK, see you in a bit,
said Camo.
Won't be long.
The two of them walked over to the group. Some of those that had obviously just joined were pointing at their red and black striped shirts and laughing happily.
Ew, what a difference wearing the shirt makes,
said Yorkshire.
It's like a club within a club. I wonder how I will feel when I'm one of them.
Why didn't you wear your new LRRC red and black? Said JB.
Well, it didn't seem quite right to wear it at someone else's club race, said Yorkshire. Not when they are not permitted to run in LRRC races in other colours.
JB looked across at the boisterous group in red and black. "Doesn't seem to bother them," he said.
Yeah, no, apparently not,
said Yorkshire. Suddenly, a lot of the group of LRRC members broke off and headed in different directions. They were clutching a bundle of leaflets. One of them headed straight for JB and Yorkshire.
What's going on?"
said Yorkshire.
Oh no, they're not, are they?
"Hiya, guys,"
said the LRRC member to them.
"have you heard of the LRRC? It's really good and well organised. Much better than..."
I am already a member,"
said Yorkshire.
"I joined last week."
"Oh,"
he said, looking Yorkshire up and down.
"Your colour's not arrived yet?"
No,"
he said. He turned to JB.
"Have you already joined as well?"
He said. "No," said JB. Another LRRC member walked up, listening to the conversation. He held a brochure out to JB.
"You should join,"
he said.
"It's the new up-and-coming thing, this is. If you have a look at this leaflet, it'll tell you all about it. I filled my name in at the back saying I recommended you." "Hey,"
said the first runner to him.
"I saw him first. You go and get your own pigeon." "There's no such thing as first," said the other runner. "It's he who gets them to sign up. You are taking too long about it. You need to get down to the sale." "I was just getting to that,"
said the first runner. JB tapped Yorkshire on the shoulder, and they both slipped away while they were arguing.
"Well, that was a trifle unedifying,"
said Yorkshire. "They're chasing those incentives they get for signing people up," said JB. "Look!" All through the regular runners getting ready for the race were those in their new red and black tops, buzzing about like demented bees, pressing people to sign up. Some were interested and others were shaking their heads.
"Oh dear me," said Yorkshire. "How impertinent of them."
"Look," said JB, pointing. The Pinckneys were stood a little away from other runners, as was their wont, in their iconic pink top, except Paddy, who was wearing the gold running vest that signified he was the leading point scorer so far over the season. He had won the overall English champion fell racer for the last 2 seasons and had represented his country in European and World Fell Racing Championships, coming first and second respectively. He was aiming to win all 3 this year. The reason JB was pointing was because one of the LRRC members was heading for them. The man in red and black hoops made his pitch. The 3 Pinckneys, as one, folded their arms and did not say a word. After standing there blankly for a few seconds, the LRRC member slinked back into the crowd of runners. "No luck for him there, chasing his incentives," said JB.
"Yes, but maybe they are having more luck,"
said Yorkshire, pointing to the opposite side. A man and wife JB recognised, who were now LRRC, were talking the pipes, the cousins of the Pinckneys, through the leaflets, and they were looking interested. "Now that could mean trouble ahead," said JB.
Yes indeed,"
said Yorkshire.
"Well, I've gone and joined now. I'm sure it's just a new effect. New money people are always unsettling at first, but then they learn about the correct way to go about things. It will all settle down soon enough, and it will be just as it always was. You'll see, JB."
The race organiser clicked his megaphone on, and there was a buzz, and then his voice came through.
"Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the annual Whimper Fell Race. I would like to thank George and Mildred for again being chief organisers."
The announcer paused for a round of gentle clapping.
"Hear, hear,"
said the crowd.
"Now, before we go on as normal, I have to bring up the following. there have been a number of complaints of LRRC members pressuring non-LRRC members to join. If you could refrain from such activity at the start of the race, it would be very much appreciated."
There was a second of silence, and then someone from the LRRC started to boo, and lots joined in. Boo! Boo! In support of the announcer, and in retaliation for the booing, some of the general members started to clap, and there was a few shouted comments. "Hear, hear! Well said!"
"It's not the done thing! It's the future!"
was shouted back.
"We're taking over for the better!"
shouted another. The fell racer came back on.
"Well, if we can get back to the race in hand."
"What were you saying about it settling down soon?" said JB to Yorkshire.
Yes, well, it's early days yet,"
he said. The announcer hurried through the usual race instructions, obviously deciding the best thing would be to get the race underway. "Oh, I forgot to check the weather forecast," said JB.
It says rain later on tonight," said Yorkshire. "Small chance of a shower this morning, but most likely clear. It says later on tonight. A small chance of a shower this morning, but most likely clear,"
said Yorkshire. "That's okay," said JB. The race started with the usual fast pace and grouping together. There was definitely an atmosphere between the LRRC runners and the rest. "Something brewing here," thought JB. "Not nice to have this atmosphere in a fell race. It should be us against the challenge of the fells. Not divided like this, and not against each other." When they were deep into the race in the high fells, the sky turned black. JB was running slowly uphill near a heavy-breathing LRRC runner. "I don't like the look of that," he said. "I hope it holds off. I've not got my rain top. Didn't think we'd need it."
"Me neither."
"Don't think many have one with them. It's only a short one, so we should be okay even if there is a shower." 10 minutes later, and the black of the sky poured down and enveloped them. JB could not remember rain like it. It was like a story from the Bible. In less than a minute, his shirt and shorts were sodden. The rain came through to his underpants and made running uncomfortable, but there was nothing to do but keep going. The rain was coming down so fast it could not soak into the ground quick enough to get away, and moved around first in pools and then trickled in streams. His socks were saturated and water burst off when he stepped, only to fill up again, and his running shoes became heavy with water and glue like mud. There was a constant rain, the water running across his face, making it hard to see. He wiped his eyes, but seconds later they were covered again. He waited for a gap in the rain, but instead the heavens sent it heavier, in strange sheets of wind-forced rain, like by a giant invisible hand. "Oh my God," he said to himself, his voice taken away by the wind, and his words slurred by water going into his open mouth. "The rain is the gap in the sheets of rain." He was surprised at how quickly his hands had started to go cold. "Really should have a running pack with me, with a rain top and gloves and everything. But you get used to running without one when the weather has been kind," he thought. Too late now. He clenched his fingers into fists to trap a little warmth inside and ran an assessment over his body. He could feel the cold starting to travel up his forearms from his hands. His cheeks were beginning to pull tight over his teeth, and the skin of his nose was tight too. He could feel the cold wind on his thighs, tightening them as the blood moved to his core for warmth. He calculated the expected time to get back, and he knew he would be okay as long as he did not trip and hurt something like an ankle and be forced to walk. Then it would be very unpleasant, dangerous even. Every part of his focus he put to moving as efficiently and quickly as possible, but without slipping. His fell shoes were great for gripping in the mud, but nothing was perfect, and if the ground was too weak to hold his weight, it would give way anyway. He told himself to remember to take care on any wet, muddy slopes. He was in a good rhythm and was sloshing through the pools. The terrain of the fell blocked off some of the wind and rain, and it was almost enjoyable for a few moments. The ground became rocky, and he had to slow for his feet to pick a way through. He stood on a protruding rock. It was as slippy as if it had been greased, and his foot immediately shot off and disappeared between two rocks. His momentum took him forward, and his weight went onto that foot, and his ankle was pinched between the rocks like a vice. He stepped onto his other foot, and he wondered if his ankle was going to be trapped and break as he carried on forward, but it was yanked out painfully. He stopped for a moment as the wave of nausea went through him. He felt it was never going to stop, but gradually it did. He had a moment of dread as he started running again, waiting for a sharp pain, but it felt just a dull soreness and a braised and chafed skin. It had been that long that he had been out in these type of conditions over rocks. He had completely forgotten how slippy they were in these fell shoes. "You idiot," he thought to himself. "Don't step on the rocks, don't step on the rocks." He ran on, confident his ankle was okay, as long as nothing else happened. Might swell up a bit overnight, he thought. The rain lashed down. He felt his lips and nose cold. Occasionally, the wind across his wet nose pinched it at the tip. That's not good, he thought. I hope I don't get frostbite. There were a few other runners about, and they took comfort from each other with little comments. "Refreshing!" shouted JB.
"You can say that again,"
laughed a runner. There was a cairn ahead with two marshals. One had better wet gear on than the other, who was hiding behind the little cairn with a clipboard.
"Get your number ready,"
shouted the marshal. JB and the other runner showed their numbers, and he passed it on to the sheltering marshal.
Are you going to abandon it?
Said the other runner.
"No point,"
said the marshal.
"We don't want people going off in different directions. Better to stick to the marked route down."
True, true,
said the runner.
"Keep to the left. Keep left,"
shouted the marshal. "Thank you, Marshal," said JB. There was a section going downhill over large boulders. It would have been tricky in dry conditions, but now water was running over the top of them and gathering in pools. Even though they were wet, JB felt the safest and quickest way down was on his bottom. After being unable to keep his backside out of pools of water, he gave up trying. He developed a method, placing his backside down and then lifting up, moving forward and putting it down again. He had tried sliding and all the grit and gravel scraped the top of his legs. This is actually quite dangerous, he thought. Do not lose the train of runners in front of you. If you wander off over the moors, you could die in this. Got to get off the fell and back. JB suddenly felt for the key in his zipped pocket to double check that it was there. If he lost it up here and was stood out in the rain, it would be a disaster. Camo and Yorkshire were probably ahead of him and Three Coats behind. They won't want to be stood out in this for long. Can't hurry though, he thought. You could easily come a cropper in this. JB's mind entered a zone of focus, blocking out anything else other than concentrating on a safe route down, not slipping and getting off the mountain safe. Through the rain, he could see the next person in front of him was a woman. Suddenly she slipped on a muddy patch. One leg shot away from her and made her do the splits. JB thought she was done for, but the sliding foot hit a patch of heather, and as our other foot went, it fortunately ended up righting her enough to get off. The action meant JB caught her up. "I thought you were done for then," he shouted through the wind and rain. "I don't think I could have done the splits that far. Well done for not falling."
"I didn't not fall on purpose," she said. "Both my feet went in a way that saved me. This is actually quite scary. Where has all this rain come from?"
"I know," he said. "The quicker we get off here, the better. But you can't hurry it."
"No,"
she said.
"I put my trail shoes on, not my fell shoes, thinking it was going to be dry. They were good on the rocks, but in this mud I've turned into Bambi. I can't keep upright. I've been on my backside twice."
She slipped a little and nearly went over again.
"This isn't funny anymore," she said. "It's actually quite scary."
She actually looked properly concerned, he thought. JB hesitated and then said it anyway. "If you want, I'll stick with you and run down with you," he said. He wondered if she would tell him she was okay, or even to sod off.
"Would you?" she said. "That's very kind, thank you so much."
"No problem," he said. JB skidded on a mud patch, righted and carried on. "You might end up carrying me down," he said. She laughed. Their pace was a little slower because she was so cautious of the grip of her shoes. The other runner took the opportunity to slip off ahead. On the way down they met a couple of runners struggling, and without saying they collected them up and all ran on together. Everyone felt better in the group. The woman, being the thinnest, was shivering the most. "The height will drop down soon, and it should be better conditions and a few degrees warmer," he said to her.
"I hope so,"
she said. They ran down, slipping and sliding as they went, the woman more than most, but she managed to keep her feet. Lower down it did feel a little warmer. There was the same amount of rain, but not as much wind, driving it in sheets. "Not far now," he said.
"Thank heavens," shouted the woman.
There was a grunt of agreement from one of the other runners. Now that they were all lower and it was safer, the other two runners picked up speed and moved ahead. It was too slippy for the lady runner to go faster. JB kept pace just behind her. Eventually they came off the fell and onto a farm track leading to the field where they had started and where their cars were parked. JB had a little left in the tank, but he kept pace with the lady runner, letting her go about 8 feet in front of him. There were two marshals huddling under a giant golfing umbrella, pointing the way, looking completely fed up and wanting to be off at home.
"Thank you, Marshal,"
said the woman, passing them, her voice affected by cold lips. "Thank you, Marshal," said JB. They came onto the field and headed for the taped corridor leading to the finish line. It would normally be crowded with the Finnish runners waiting for their friends, but it was semi-abandoned apart from some miserable marshals and a few people in thick raincoats, some with umbrellas. The grass on the way down to the finish line was churned up to mud, and the woman had a last slide before getting across, JB coming in just behind. Their last task was to show their race number to the marshals, ticking everyone back in. One was bravely out in the rain, stamping his feet to keep them warm, and the others were under a little tarpaulin, being battered by the rain and wind. "Glad that's done," said JB.
"So glad,"
she said, shivering.
"Thanks for seeing me down. That was quite scary up there."
"I think we helped each other down," he said. He held out his hand. "People call me JB," he said.
"Marion,"
she said, holding out her hand. JB shook it. "Bloody hell, I thought I was cold," he said. "You'd better get warmed up quick."
"I'll be okay now," she said. "My husband's in the car. He'll have it warm and I'll soon be in dry clothes."
Near the exit to the field, cars were churning up the mud and skidding. One was stuck with the driver revving the engine, the wheels spinning but the car going nowhere. "Oh dear," said JB. "This is going to be a right mess to get off."
"We'll be okay," she said. "Four-wheel drive Land Rover. Best of luck."
"Might see you on the next fell race," he said.
Yes, probably. Bye,"
she said, doing her best to skate through the mud towards her car. It turned out that they were diagonally opposite each other where they had parked. Her husband came out of the Land Rover and opened the side door for her as her fingers were too cold to do it. When JB got to his car, Camo and Yorkshire came running across. They had been waiting under a large tree.
"At last,"
said Yorkshire, shivering.
"Where have you been?"
said Camo.
"Come on, get that door open and that heater on."
"What are we going to do?"
said Yorkshire.
"I've got no change of clothing."
"We'll have to strip off our tops, wring them out as best we can, and then put them on the dashboard in front of the heater,"
said Camo, already stripping.
"Ooh, do we have to?"
said Yorkshire.
"You'll get hypothermia if you keep that top on,"
said Camo. All three of them stripped off their tops. JB happened to have a coat on the back seat, and he put that on and zipped it right up tight under his chin.
"Lucky you,"
said Yorkshire. "I know, sorry," he said. JB looked across at where Marion and her husband were. He was helping her strip off out of her wet things. No one cared, they were all doing the same. "I bet she can't grip with her cold hands," he thought. He put the gear stick in neutral and turned the engine on for the heater. Camo squeezed the water out of his top with his giant hands. Yorkshire looked at him do it. He was pasty white with a sunken chest and tiny grey nipples.
"I say, Camo, would you be kind enough to do mine?"
he said, passing him his top. Camo put his top on the dashboard near the heater and took Yorkshire's top. Yorkshire shivered and got in the back seat of the car. Camo seemed impervious to the cold and stood there wringing out Yorkshire's top. JB got in the car at the driver's seat. Camo opened the door.
"Do you have any plastic bags to cover the seat?"
he said. "No," said JB. "I should carry them. I'll put some in the boot for next time." Camo picked up the mat off the floor well, banged all the grit and dirt off it, and put it on the car seat before sitting down. "That's a good idea," said JB.
"Best I can do,"
said Camo.
"I hate getting my car seats wet."
"We've certainly been caught out this time," said JB.
"You can say that again,"
said Yorkshire.
"I hope Three Coats hurries up. What's keeping him?"
All three of them were in the car, and with their wet bodies and clothes, all the windows steamed up. JB opened the window a crack to let the steam out and try to clear the windows.
"Ooh, shut that window. There's a draft back here,"
said Yorkshire. "We need to clear the windows," said JB. "And with three of us in and not moving with the windows shut, we'll suffocate." After a few minutes, which seemed like 10 minutes, there was a tap at the window. JB could not see who it was through the steam.
Is it Three Coats?"
said Yorkshire from the back.
"Why doesn't he just get in?"
JB reluctantly wound down the window. It was the lady runner, Marion, all wrapped up in a giant thick warm coat, with her husband.
"Thanks for getting me down,"
she said.
"This is my husband, Tim."
"I think you got me down just as much as I got you," he said. "Nice to meet you, Tim. I'm JB. He held his hand out of the car to shake him by the hand. "I'd better not open the door," he said. "I've got some half-naked, freezing cold chaps in here." Tim shook his hand.
You're mad, you lot," he laughed. "Absolutely mad. I don't know how you do it."
"Yeah, being mad helps," said JB.
"No dry clothes?"
said Marion, bending down and peering in. "No," said JB. "We'll be all right. Just waiting for one more." Camo leaned unshyly forward.
Hello, nice to meet you. Bit of a wet one there, he said.
Yes, she laughed.
I'd get out and say hello, said Camo, but I'm half naked here.
I can see, she laughed. It was still raining, and Marion, though looking warmer, was still cold. Don't catch cold, said JB. Yes, said Marion. Best not to stand about in this. Thanks again. No problem, said JB. Tim looked at him. Mad, you lot. Mad. He laughed. Mad. Absolutely mad. He had on a thick, expensive brand-name coat that was nice and warm. They walked off in the rain. JB wound the window up.
Nice couple,
said Camo. Yeah, said JB. A minute later, and Three Coats appeared. He got straight in the car, dripping water all over.
That was horrible, that,
he said.
That's the worst ever. I didn't think I was going to make it.
What are you doing?
Said Camo.
You've soaked JB's seats all the way through there. You can't travel back in wet clothes. Get outside and strip off.
I've got nothing to change into,
said Three Coats.
I'm not going back out in that. Are you mad?
He's right, Three Coats,
said Yorkshire.
You can't sit in those wet clothes. Everyone knows that. It'll be bad for a minute, but then you'll feel the benefit later.
Three Coats hesitated, and then got outside. He stood there trying to take his tight wet top off with the door wide open.
Shut the bloody door,
shouted Camo.
I'll only be a second,
he said. He struggled out of his top and got in and shut the door. He sat there shivering and shaking.
It's still damn cold in here,
he said.
That's because some idiot left the door open,
said Camo, giving him a stern look.
I'm not an idiot,
said Three Coats.
Right, can we set off, JB?
said Yorkshire. Can't yet, said JB. The window has just all steamed up, with Three Coats bringing in that water. It'll be a few minutes before it clears.
Bloody hell,
said Camo.
I couldn't help that,
said Three Coats. Everyone sat there, not speaking, a little cold and even more miserable.
This has got to be the worst fell race I've ever done,
said Camo.
Agreed, the worst,
repeated Yorkshire, his teeth chattering.
You can say that again,
said Three Coats. Everyone went quiet, and the only sound was the rain tinkling away on the roof and the noise of the engine and the heater. Through the mist, two silhouettes appeared at JB's window.
Is it the marshals trying to get us to leave?
said Camo. There was a tap at JB's window, and he wound it down. It was Tim and Marion again.
Here you are, lads,
said Tim, passing a polystyrene cup through the window.
We got you a coffee each. I took the liberty of putting milk and 2 sugars in. Hope you don't mind.
Oh, thanks, Tim, said JB, taking it and passing it on to Camo. That's really kind of you. What do we owe you?
Forget it,
said Tim, handing in the other 3 coffees one by one.
You got my crazy wife back to me off that soaking wet mountain. No kids, no pets. It's just the 2 of us. For better or worse, she's all I've got. Ha ha.
Ooh, that's very gracious of you,
said Yorkshire, leaning forward from the back seat.
It's much appreciated.
Yes,
said Three Coats.
Thanks very much.
Tim stepped back, and Marion came to the window. Here's a T-shirt each for you, she said, pushing them through.
What?
said JB. Tim is a big guy, so they might be a little too big for some of you. Not you, she said, nodding at Camo.
You're kidding,
said Camo, looking at the large T-shirt in his hands. We are on our way to the lakes for a few days, and Tim always packs too many. He won't need them all, she said. Big soft Camo was nearly in tears.
Are you sure?
He said. Of course, she said. I'm going to go and get in the car and warm up. You boys have a safe journey back.
Thank you very much,
said Camo.
Thank you kindly,
said Yorkshire.
Thank you,
said Three Coats. Thank you, said JB. Marion walked off to get warm in the car.
You've got a jacket on, and the rain has eased off a little,
said Tim to JB.
You'd better come and check out the route off.
OK, said JB, getting out of the car and shutting the door quickly behind to keep the heat in for the rest of them. He followed Tim down the farm field until they could see the entrance. The farmer's field had turned into mud. One section of it was particularly bad. Cars were stuck. Some were spinning their wheels and churning up mud so that the underside of the car was caked. A runner walking behind was sprayed head to toe, with the driver unaware because his rear window was coated. Oh dear. Through the struggling ordinary cars, a four-wheel drive came through, cutting up the ground, making it harder for the rest. The farmer, in his thick yellow outfit, like a lighthouseman, stood shaking his fist and going mad. His two sons were operating tractors to help get the cars off the field and onto the hard-packed road. The problem was that the worst bit was all near the entrance. One of the early leavers had tried to get off and aquaplaned into a dry stone wall. The car had long been dragged out onto a verge of the road, but the farmer now had a lopsided wall with a section over, adding to his frustration.
Never again,
shouted the farmer to the race organiser.
Don't ask me next year to do this.
Oh dear, said JB.
He'll be all right,
said the race organiser.
He says this every year. He'd be bored if he wasn't complaining about something.
Are you sure? Said JB. He looks pretty angry.
Of course I'm sure,
said the organiser.
He's me brother.
Right, Tim, said JB. I'd better get this let home. Thanks once again for everything. Don't mention it, he said. You'll probably see us around at one of these races. I'll get the boys to wash and iron those shirts and get them back to you, said JB. No, forget it, he said. Marion's right. I've got way too many. Well, thanks. When JB got back in the car, everyone was a lot happier.
How nice are they?
Said Camo.
I love the fell running community coming together like that.
Really nice,
said Yorkshire.
Yeah, nice,
said Three Coats.
And look at that,
said Camo, holding out the brand name on the shirt he had on.
I've been on fell races when you get a free t-shirt, but not this pricey. I can't afford these. We've had a right result here, lads, and it's my size too.
Yes, indeed,
said Yorkshire.
Mine's a little large. I might use it for a bed shirt.
Oh, and that brew,
said Camo.
That was the best coffee I've ever tasted.
It did rather hit the spot,
said Yorkshire. Three Coats wriggled around in his seat.
What's up with you, Three Coats?
said Camo.
Have you got ants in your pants?
My seat's all wet,
he said.
I wish I'd never sat down with them wet clothes on.
Told you,
said Camo. Three Coats looked at JB.
JB, I couldn't make up my mind while you were out which of the two tops left that I wanted. I've changed my mind. Will you swap?
He said. I know what you're up to, Three Coats. You're only saying that because yours is wet now, said JB. No, I quite like this colour. It's not one I would have chosen for myself.
Uh,
said Three Coats.
Are we going to get going then, or what?
Give him a minute to have his coffee, Three Coats, said Camo. We all waited for you.
A minute later, they started off, and the other three saw for the first time the difficulty in getting off the field.
Bloody hell, said Camo. It's like the Somme out there. No man's land and all the trenches.
JB noticed that the car was already sinking. You're not going to like this, guys, he said, but I think you might have to get out. I think I can get through, but not with all your weight in.
You're kidding.
You're kidding,
said Yorkshire.
No way, I'm getting out,
said Three Coats.
No, he's right,
said Camo.
If we get stuck or skid into a wall, we'll be here for ages. Better we get out now, or we might end up having to push to get it out of the mud.
Camo started taking his top off.
What are you doing, Camo?
said Yorkshire.
I'm saving my dry top,
said Camo.
Well, I don't care. It's not raining too bad, but I want my top dry when I get back in. Oh, bloody hell,
said Three Coats. Yorkshire sighed. Then he and Three Coats joined Camo in taking off their tops. Camo held onto the door handle.
Are you two ready?
Yes.
Yes. Right, on the count of three then. 1, 2, 3,
he said, and opened the door on the count of 3. Camo and Three Coats followed. Camo was walking in front, chest out, proudly marching down the field. Yorkshire and Three Coats followed, with their arms wrapped around themselves, trying to keep warm and hide their modesty. The few people that were about helping stopped and stared at the little parade. JB had a last assessment of the terrain of the field and where the muddier and wetter patches were. Right, here goes, he said to himself. He set off for the opening of the gate, not a straight line through, but through what he felt was the best route. His wheels span at one point, but the momentum carried him through. He made sure he was away from the gate and waited for the other three to get in. They got in, giggling and laughing.
Well, we gave those 2 old lady marshals a Sunday afternoon treat.
We did, didn't we?
laughed Yorkshire.
That was quite fun, that. And we've got dry tops.
Travelling back, they were actually in a good mood. JB had a job to keep his window clear at the start, but then eventually the engine was warm and he stopped having to wipe it clear. Three Coats checked his phone.
Oh, what's this?
He said.
10 missed calls? All from the same unknown number?
His phone started ringing.
It's the same number again,
said Three Coats, cutting it off.
Persistent little devils, aren't they?
said Yorkshire.
I don't answer numbers I don't know,
said Three Coats.
The government should do something about it.
Like what?
said JB.
I don't know,
said Three Coats. Yorkshire's number started ringing.
How strange,
said Yorkshire.
An unknown caller for me now.
Don't answer it,
said Three Coats.
Don't be silly, Three Coats,
said Yorkshire, swiping across his phone.
Hello? Yes, it is he,
said Yorkshire.
I'm Bartholomew Gray. Why, yes, I do know a Brian Coffey.
Three Coats was shaking his head.
Yes, he's right here. Next to me in the car on our way home, he said. Oh dear. Oh dear. Really? Yes, I'll put him on.
Three Coats was shaking his head, not wanting to take the phone.
You really need to take this call, Brian.
JB took a glance in the rearview mirror. Three Coats sheepishly held the phone up to his ear.
Hello?
He said.
Yes, I'm Brian Coffey.
There was a muffled voice from the phone.
I think I was number 217,
said Three Coats.
Why, have I won the raffle?
The person on the end of the line started shouting, and Three Coats held the phone away from his ear.
Well, there's no need for that,
said Three Coats.
It was an honest mistake. I was really cold and wet, and I cut across the field to the car and...
They all listened, intrigued.
Now, just you look here,
said Three Coats.
Well, I can assure you, my parents were married a long time before they had me.
Camo gave JB a look.
Now look here,
said Three Coats.
Hello? 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 Well, he's gone and put the phone down on me now.
Three Coats put his phone away and looked up to find all eyes on him.
What?
He said.
What do you mean, what?
Said Camo.
What was all that about?
Well, at the end of the fell race, I didn't go through the finish line in the final checkpoint. I cut across the field to the car. They thought I might still be up on the fell, and there are people out looking for me now. He slammed the phone down on me to get on his walkie-talkie and call them back in.
Camo looked at his watch.
We finished ages ago,
he said.
You've had people out looking for you in these conditions?
Well, I didn't know,
said Three Coats.
It's not my fault.
Well, I have to say, it absolutely is, Brian,
said Yorkshire.
There you go, calling me Brian again,
he said.
Well, it is your naughty name,
said Camo.
No, it isn't,
said Three Coats. It went quiet while they thought of those still out on the fells looking for Three Coats. Do you think they will have the helicopter up? Said JB, with a straight face. Camo looked at him like it was a daft idea in the rain, saw his face and changed.
Most definitely,
said Camo.
And the dogs. They'll have the dogs out for sure.
Will they? Said Three Coats.
Oh, definitely,
said Yorkshire, going along with it.
You're pulling me leg,
he said.
We're not,
said Camo. Did you not see the dog at the start? Said JB. They have them there, checking for performance-enhancing drugs. But also, if someone goes missing, they can set them out on the trail. Three Coats was thinking.
There might have been a dog at the start,
he said, half to himself.
You could get debarred for this,
said Camo.
Debarred?
Said Three Coats.
Really?
Well,
said Yorkshire.
They do have all your details, phone number and address and everything.
Oh, golly,
said Three Coats. He'll be okay, said JB. If he pays up.
Pays what?
Said Three Coats. Well, said JB, it'll be about 2,000 for the helicopter call out and £100 for each dog. You'll be all right if they only used a dog or two, but if they had 10 out, then that'll be pricey.
Over £2,000?
Said Three Coats.
Just because I cut across a field? It's not right, that. I'm not paying that. No way. No way am I paying that. That's not right.
You could always trade in your cash, Kai,
said Camo.
If you get desperate.
No one's taking my cash guy off me,
he said.
Not a chance.
Everyone went silent while Three Coats fumed. The three of them tried not to look at each other. Camo was holding his breath, going red in the face, trying not to laugh, and then he burst. Yorkshire and JB burst out laughing too.
You are pulling me leg, I knew it,
he said.
I knew it.
This sent them laughing even louder.
Got you with that one.
Eventually they stopped laughing and settled down. Yorkshire looked at Three Coats.
It's not funny,
he said. This set them all off again. Hook, line and sinker. Reeled you in on that one.
You didn't.
God, that rain today,
said Camo.
I've not seen rain like that in a long time. I kept having to wipe it off my eyes.
Raining cats and dogs,
said Three Coats.
That's what my grandma used to say. It was raining cats and dogs.
You with the dogs again,
said Camo. Three Coats gave him a look.
Il Pleut de cord,
said Yorkshire.
Pleut's what now?
said Camo.
It's French,
said Yorkshire.
I gathered that much,
said Camo.
The French don't say raining cats and dogs,
said Yorkshire.
They say Pleut de cord. It's raining ropes.
Raining ropes,
said Camo.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, rain coming down like long ropes. Pleut de cord. I'm going to use that one.
I thought it was more like sheets than ropes, said JB. Like being hit with a wet bedsheet.
You're right, JB,
said Camo.
It was in sheets.
That's Pleut de drapes,
said Yorkshire.
Pleut de drapes.
We could have invented a saying there,
said Camo.
You know what? I love smarting bottom and all that, but in a strange way, at the end of it all, I think this has now become my favourite ever fell race.
You what?
said Three Coats.
This has been awful, this.
Exactly,
said Camo.
It's because it was so terrible that it's been great.
I know what you mean, Camo,
said Yorkshire.
That terrible rain. And the cold.
Having to get out of the car half naked, while JB took ages to get through the farm gate,
said Three Coats, suddenly smiling.
That was my favourite bit.
Brian getting told off by the race organiser,
said Yorkshire, smiling at him. Said Three Coats.
That bit wasn't funny.
Yes, it was, they all said together, laughing. Don't forget Marion and Tim getting us them coffees, said JB.
And our nice shirts,
said Camo.
Oh, I love this shirt, me.
Oh, yes,
said Yorkshire.
It's so nice to see people helping each other out. Of our great fell running community.
JB dropped them all off and was on his way back home by himself. He had the heater on full blast and the windows open, trying to dry out inside his car. He was chuckling to himself and realised that they had not mentioned once on the way back the LRRC.